Good morning, everybody. Could everybody grab a seat, please? Welcome to day 2 of the 2022 CARSP conference. My name is Brenda Suggett, and I am CARSP Executive Director. It's wonderful to be at our first in-person CARSP conference since COVID. I'm especially excited that we have a hybrid conference, a decision we made to be more inclusive of those who are unable to make it for various reasons. I want to thank the people of Greater Sudbury for putting together a winning proposal to host our conference, and especially for those who've been part of our organizing committee who worked so hard at the planning of this conference. We truly could not have done it without you, so thank you. Today, we have a full itinerary. We open with dignitaries, both locally and provincially. We then have an engaging keynote who will speak on speed management, a panel session bound to expand our knowledge and understanding of rural road safety, 9 presentation sessions on various topics, a trade show, a poster display, and to top it all off, a banquet in a cavern, complete with awards and dancing. It can't get much better than that. Now, to start off today's speakers, I am extremely happy to introduce the Deputy Minister, Doug Jones. Doug brings over 3 decades of executive leadership in both public and private sectors. Over his career, Doug has managed a variety of portfolios, including construction, maintenance, infrastructure, road safety, transportation policy, municipal transit service, operations, and health and safety. Most recently, Doug was the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Workplace Health, Safety, and Compensation Commission in New Brunswick. In Alberta, he served as the Deputy City Manager with the City of Edmonton, where he was responsible for citywide operations, including transportation policy, providing leadership over the municipal transit service, transformation, and partnering with infrastructure colleagues in the construction and launch of the light rapid transit lines. He has also held positions of Senior Vice President with Canada Post, the President of INRS, and also held many other senior leadership roles with Lafarge in both Canada and the United States. And please help me in welcoming Deputy Minister Doug Jones.
Well, thank you, Brenda, so much for the kind introduction. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Bonjour tout le monde. It's a pleasure to be able to join you all, and I really am sorry that I'm not able to meet in person this week, although I do hope to connect with many of you in the coming weeks and months. Just the rundown on the topics that you're going to be talking to or speaking about today is very interesting, and I'll be interested to hear more about them. So I want to thank the Canadian Association of Road Safety Professionals for organizing this conference and inviting me to speak with you today. As Ontario's Deputy Minister of Transportation, the safety of the province's transportation network is the centerpiece of my work. And while we are moving full steam ahead as we build new and expanded highways, roads, bridges, and transit, our mandate goes much further than just getting things built. Because a successful transportation network is one that is safe, reliable, and efficient. I'm so grateful to have such a strong partner in the Canadian Association of Road Safety Professionals, whose membership continues to inform much of our ministry's work. For more than 2 decades now, Ontario has consistently ranked among the top 5 jurisdictions for road safety across North America. While this is something to be proud of, there is always more work to do to make our roads ever safer, because one life lost on our roads is just one too many. Nothing is more important than protecting the health and well-being of Ontarians. I think the theme of this year's conference, collaborating on the United Nations Decade of Action for Road Safety, is precisely the type of conversation we need to have to help us develop the strategies that will save lives and make Ontario's community safer. Strategies like those that we at the Ministry of Transportation have introduced to help improve road safety. And in my time today, I would like to talk about some of these key initiatives, many of which have been guided by the vital work that many of you here are doing from the audience. Working closely with stakeholders and our municipal partners, our ministry has taken a hard look at current road safety measures and taken decisive action where it has made sense to do so. With high-risk driving on a notable rise throughout the pandemic, the ministry took action. Last year, the Ontario Legislature passed the Moving Ontarians More Safely Act, better known as the MUMS Act. The motive behind the MUMS Act was clear: to protect law-abiding road users and crack down on the bad actors. And we did that by introducing measures like longer driver's license suspensions and longer vehicle impoundment periods for drivers who engage in stunt driving, street racing, and aggressive driving. Camera-based enforcement programs have the potential to improve road safety outcomes in Ontario by ensuring high-risk driving behaviors are consistently monitored and enforced by cameras, which helps keep all users safe on the roads. Over the last 4 years, our ministry has expanded upon the existing red light camera program, which has been in effect since 2004, to establish automated speed enforcement, a school bus camera program, and a streetcar camera program as of July 1st. To provide further support to municipalities, the ministry will introduce a regulatory framework on July 1st, allowing these vehicle-based offenses captured by automated cameras to be processed as administrative penalties. This approach would help streamline the processing of infractions and reduce administrative costs for municipalities by allowing these contraventions to be adjudicated outside of traditional courts. These cost savings will encourage more municipalities to adopt camera programs, further improving the safety on our roads. We understand that winter driving can be incredibly challenging, especially here in Northern Ontario. That's why we have amongst the highest winter maintenance standards in North America. The ministry is responsible for the year-round maintenance of approximately 17,000 kilometers of provincial highways, including over 2,800 bridges. Every winter, we have more than 1,100 pieces of equipment available for winter maintenance, and within 30 minutes of the start of a storm, we can deploy equipment to plow, salt, and sand highways across the province. And highway maintenance never truly stops. Our contractors are active 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, during and following a storm to clear highways and perform post-storm cleanup work. In fact, even while everyone else is getting ready to enjoy warm summer weather like we are today, our maintenance contractors are hard at work preparing all the necessary equipment and supplies for the upcoming winter season. As part of our efforts to improve Ontario's already strong track record on road safety, we updated the Ontario 511 Traveller Information app with features to help make it easier for people to plan their routes during the winter. These included reported road conditions, Environment Canada weather warnings, and a track by plow feature, allowing drivers to track snowplows and salt trucks on provincial highways. The app also provides images from over 650 cameras, includes up-to-date highway information on construction, collisions, and road closures, and an easy-to-use map view and a drive mode that offers hands-free audio alerts. As I mentioned earlier, our ministry is moving full steam ahead to build a transportation network that meets the needs of people today and for decades to come. And as we build, we must have a clear vision for the future to achieve the right mix of public infrastructure projects that will create thousands of good-paying jobs during each year of construction, because the people of Ontario deserve no less. Over the past 3 years, we have released 4 regional transportation plans, one for Southwestern Ontario, one for Northern Ontario, one for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and one for Eastern Ontario. These plans form the blueprint for future action in each region to expand highways and transit services, support growth, create economic opportunities, and improve travel options. They also include hundreds of near-term actions to transform the region's transportation network. And together, they will form a single long-term vision for Ontario's transportation network. I'm proud to be leading a ministry that has put forward a coordinated approach to transportation planning that addresses the unique need of every corner of the province. And as we build a better future, we must also think and act differently and be agile and flexible enough to respond to the needs of a changing world. And a big part of building a future-ready transportation system is embracing innovation and technological change. The ministry is committed to ensuring Ontario remains the leading jurisdiction in North America for developing new and emerging transportation technologies with the potential to make the way we move people and goods safer, more efficient, and environmentally friendly. We recently introduced the large quadricycle pilot program, which allows municipalities to choose where and how to permit the use of these bikes that can seat 12 or more people. This pilot program aims to have a positive economic impact on municipalities by supporting new tourism opportunities. Other pilot programs, like our ministry's e-scooter pilot, aim to improve those crucial first and last mile connections by exploring small-scale, flexible transportation services. Our ministry's innovative pilot programs solidify Ontario's role as world leader in mobility innovation while preparing for the many new and emerging technologies that will transform the way we travel. And our commitment to innovation doesn't stop there. We are moving forward with a preliminary design and environmental assessment of 2 sites on Highway 11 near North Bay to determine a site for a 2+1 highway pilot. A 2+1 highway is a 3-lane highway with a center passing lane that changes directions approximately every 2 to 5 kilometers. This 2+1 model has been shown to improve traffic flow and safety in other international jurisdictions, and a 2+1 highway in Ontario would be the first of its kind in North America. The progress we've made on road safety in the last several years is due, in no small part, to the close collaboration with our partners, like the Canadian Association of Road Safety Professionals and its members. We've accomplished a great deal together, but as we all know, work to improve road safety never stops. I want to commend you for your ongoing commitment to protecting Ontario's road users. By working together, we will help people achieve their goals and ensure the province's roads and highways remain some of the safest in the world. I know we can achieve our shared goal of building a safe, resilient, and future-ready transportation network that makes life easier, connects people to jobs, and supports the province's long-term economic growth and prosperity. Thanks again for inviting me to speak with you today. Miigwech et merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister Doug Jones. Really appreciate that great overview of the current and future plans that you're doing. And I think a number of people in the audience probably are somehow connected to a lot of those projects and they're resonating with them right now. And I think it's great to have safety built in too. And I heard some other goals too, sustainability and equity and so forth. So thanks so much. That's a great, and I know there's a number of MTO staff that are participating as well, either here or online. So we truly do appreciate the partnership with MTO. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you. Bye now.
Okay. I now have the pleasure of introducing our next opening speaker. His name is Mr. Brian Bigger, and he is the Mayor of Sudbury, and we're just so happy that he could join us today and help us open the conference. Brian Bigger has been the Mayor of Greater Sudbury since being elected in 2014. Born, raised, and educated in Greater Sudbury, Mayor Bigger has seen the community transform in many ways and has a strong vision for the future. Prior to serving as mayor, Brian worked in a number of capacities nationally in the private sector and municipal sector, including his role as the City of Greater Sudbury's first Auditor General. As mayor, Brian knows that Greater Sudbury is well positioned as a regional economic cluster, and thanks to its highly skilled and culturally diverse workforce. Well known for its international excellence in mining service and supply, and environmental remediation, Greater Sudbury has evolved into a dynamic and diverse regional service hub in healthcare, research, education, business, and tourism. Mayor Bigger is a member of numerous boards of directors, including the Sudbury Food Bank, Greater Sudbury Development Corporation, and the Sudbury Housing Corporation. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Bigger to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Great, and thank you. Bonjour, Ani. Thank you all for being here in Sudbury this morning. Before I begin, something that I've done and I believe is quite important is to do a land acknowledgement and acknowledge that we're meeting here today on the traditional lands of the Atikameksheng and Anishinaabeg, and that the large area that we consider Greater Sudbury also exists within and adjacent to the territorial lands of the Wanapitei First Nation and the Sagamok Anishinaabeg. We honor and recognize and respect these Indigenous peoples as the traditional stewards of the land which we share today. I'd also like to acknowledge the Métis and Inuit people for their contributions to the land and our community. Together, we have a history of calling upon our collective and honored traditions and spirits to work to build a great city and community. And we see a great future here in Sudbury for future generations. And so I say miigwech to our Indigenous community. As Mayor of Greater Sudbury, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to our community for the second day of this year's Canadian Association of Road Safety Professionals Conference. And I hope you're enjoying your time here and all that our city has to offer. It will get warmer. So from yesterday to today to tomorrow, it'll be 32 degrees. So more back to what we're hoping for our summer. Sudbury is often mistaken for a small city. And people-wise, that's true. We are home to a population of around 166,000 people. But what many people don't realize is that geographically speaking, we are the largest municipality in Ontario and the 5th largest municipality by area in Canada at over 3,200 square kilometers. And so we know all about roads in Sudbury. It's something, that as mayor, I hear about frequently. And it is a significant challenge for us to maintain our roads on a continual basis. Within the city limits, we have more than 3,600 lane kilometers of roadway. The provincial network, we just heard the previous speaker talking about 17,000 kilometers of provincially maintained roads. So 3,600 lane kilometers is quite significant. One of the things about many of our roads is that they're in rural settings, so rural and highway type settings. And so that's important. I know that's important for all of you who understand the differences between safety on different types of road networks. We are very committed to ensuring the safety of everyone who uses our road infrastructure, whether it's on foot or 2 wheels or on 4 wheels. And I'm proud to have introduced a number of initiatives to support that commitment. Sudbury was one of the first communities in Ontario to implement pedestrian crossovers, which prioritize pedestrians crossing the road. Since 2016, we've installed more than 45 pedestrian crossovers throughout our community. We've also made significant investments in building separated cycling infrastructure on our busiest roads. And we've installed more than 175 kilometers of new infrastructure for cyclists since 2016. And we've made it, as a city council, we started off in 2018 with a commitment to spend at least $1 million each year on pedestrian and cycling infrastructure to keep those people safe. We're preparing to turn on 6 new red light cameras in July, which we all know has proven to reduce the most serious types of collisions and intersections by 25%. We constructed Maley Drive, which has 3 roundabouts, soon to be expanded to 4 roundabouts, and from a collision and safety perspective. And one thing that I'm very interested in, and it's been on my mind for a number of years, although we're not there yet, is the safety on rural and highway roads. Understanding that they're extremely dangerous for children taking school buses, and so I would be very happy to be an early adopter of stop arm cameras to save lives for children in rural and highway settings, particularly in the area of Sudbury. The conversations I've had would include partnering with busing systems right through to Manitoulin Island. And so I think that would be a significant impact on safety here in our community and surrounding region. So obviously there's always more to do, but we have, I believe, made great strides in the last few years towards road safety. And with that said, I looked at the lineup that of people and speakers that you have, and I know you'll end up with a lot more information to take back to your own communities. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your conference here in Greater Sudbury. Enjoy Science North. I'm not sure if you're in the cavern, but it's an exceptional space. You will remember that space for your meal and your gathering tonight. So thank you very much. Merci. Miigwech.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And as it happens, we're actually having our banquet in the cavern tonight. So yeah, it is a great, amazing space, we've been told. So and thank you so much for that warm welcome. And I was just mentioning to the mayor before he came up that the team who put together the winning proposal for us to host this area host the conference here, named all these different projects that they had worked on. And they have a road safety standing committee, and there's just a lot of great road safety work happening here. And we just wanted to give them an opportunity to share that. And as you said, make rural road safety also a priority. So thank you so much. Okay, now we are on to the a few little housekeeping items before I introduce our keynote speaker. As I mentioned earlier, the banquet is tonight, and as I've just said, it's at the Science North Vale Cavern. It starts at 6:30 with a cocktail reception, followed by the dinner at 7, then awards and dancing. And I think we mentioned yesterday, it is a 40-minute walk. There is a sidewalk, but yeah, 40 minutes. So to keep that in mind. And we just ask that you try and arrange rides with another colleague, or there is a taxi, a few different taxi services, and we provided the links in the help area of the Feed Loop app. There's a little list in there. Also, for the Tuesday lunch, we're giving you the opportunity to explore some of the local cuisine. And there's 5 or 6 restaurants that are within walking distance. There's also some fast food places. And we called over them just to make them aware, but they did encourage us to get you to make reservations should you choose to go to one of those. And the list of restaurants is also in the help app too. All right, and now I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker that has changed 3 times over the last week and a bit. So the first person, Dr. Job, it was because of travel plans that had changed and shifted, and so he wasn't able to make it. Then Dr. Marie-Soleil Cloutier, due to illness, wasn't able to make it, and thank goodness that Dr. Andrew Howard was kind enough and willing to step forward. He worked on the same project that Dr. Marie-Soleil was going to speak about, so he's very familiar with it. So you'll see her name on a lot of the slides. So I'm just so thankful that he was willing to step in. So Dr. Andrew Howard is an orthopedic surgeon at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto and a senior scientist at the hospital's Research Institute. His research evaluates interventions to prevent childhood transportation injury using real-world data. His CIHR-funded research program focuses on child pedestrians, bicyclists, and motor vehicle occupants, and has included at various times data collection in every province and territory in Canada. He collaborates with teams of researchers from across Canada in all of his road safety work. Innovations including novel child safety seats have arisen from this work and are now marketed across Canada and abroad. In addition to his clinical and research activities, he directs the orthopedic division at the Hospital for Sick Children and the Office of International Surgery for the University of Toronto. Please welcome me and join me in welcoming Dr. Howard.
environment ahead of them, but by the time they've focused down to only a 65-degree angle. Where are the children at the roadside? Where are the children on scooters? What happens when we're putting more bicycles into our traffic flow with their unpredictable lateral mobility? That's what people are saying when they do this at a bicyclist. They're saying, you have unpredictable lateral mobility, sir, and we're attempting to share road space. So we need to know where everybody is. And then when we see where everybody is and we need to do something about it, we've got to decide to hit the brakes, and we've got to hit the brakes. And whether it's me or my autonomous vehicle starting to do this, the faster I'm going, the longer it takes. And everybody here recognizes an exponential curve after watching COVID go through, right? But the longer it takes, the longer it takes. This is the only slide I needed to leave you with. So if you just, I'm glad most people are still paying attention. And I just want you to look at this equation that first came your way in high school and recognize that the V is squared. And that nice little squared V is what makes that kick up of our little sigmoid curve here, right? Somebody would be disappointed if I didn't say that's exactly the same shape as the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. And the only reason you can walk around as a mammal is because there are sigmoid curves in biology as well. But here it's that little V squared that kicks this up. And we're recognizing that between 30 kilometers an hour, where you're almost guaranteed to survive, and 70 kilometers an hour, where you're almost guaranteed not to, is where the discussion lies. That's where urban speeds lie. That's why there's so much value in moving us over to that 30 kilometer an hour end, because hey, it's human beings in front of that bumper. And this is the relationship between that kinetic energy equation. And this is why speed reduction works for all crash types and for all road users. And the Australians, being blunt and illustrative, have put that into these sorts of slides and have said, look, at 30 kilometers an hour, 90% of the pedestrians are going to live. And at 50 kilometers an hour, 10% of the pedestrians are going to live if that's your impact speed. But then they motivate the urban drivers as well by saying, if you're in a side impact crash, which means like you're a pedestrian carrying a car door, right? That's all you're really doing. You might have a seatbelt, but that car door is coming at you one way or another. So here's a pedestrian carrying a car door, and they're a little bit better. Maybe you should do that, right? In some of the roads in Sudbury, just carry a car door around, because you can increase your odds of survival to about 60% at 60 kilometers an hour. But even if you're the vehicle occupant, even if you've got all of this stuff, a closing speed 90 kilometer an hour head-on crash is a much different thing than a 60 kilometer an hour crash. So speed reduction reduces the likelihood of a collision because of our field of vision, our reaction time, our braking distance, the driver, the pedestrian awareness, all the processing that you do. But most importantly, it reduces the consequences of a collision should it happen, and that's because of kinetic energy. And that's got a squared relationship with speed. So how do we tackle it? Well, we talk about Vision Zero, which is a kind of a modern approach or a systems approach to transportation design. Or we can go old school and think, what about the engineering approaches, which would be changing the built environment stuff, changing the regulatory environment. What about educational approaches, which is more like getting people to use the stuff properly and accept it than it is like teaching children how to cross the road, like that Frogger video game, like actually teaching people to cross the road is not the effective part of education, but making people aware that road safety actually works is probably as important as making people aware that vaccines actually work. And then there's enforcement, and that's like a political hot button one. So Vision Zero is meant to take the traditional approach of thinking about road deaths being inevitable and assuming that humans are rational and perfect in their behavior, and an approach of saying, let's get rid of collisions, which we're probably never getting rid of as long as we've got two cars on the road. And instead of focusing on individual responsibility in the traditional approach and thinking of saving lives as something expensive, Vision Zero gets all inspired and says traffic deaths are preventable, and we all know that that's true. But the trick is to integrate these lapses in human behavior into your system's design and say, we don't really care about some crashes as long as they don't actually hurt people. So we're not saying reduce the burden of collisions. We're not trying to put the body shops out of business. We don't mind people tussling at a roundabout a little bit if they're all in bumper cars that are well protected. But we don't want those 90-degree side impacts at that intersection that used to be a roundabout. And it's a systems approach, and saving lives is not expensive if you've got data. And good grief, if there's one thing that's cheap in today's world, it's data, right? I mean, it's the kind of the problem is how are we going to do all of it and what are we going to do with it? And you can see Vision Zero looking at things like a safe driver running at a safe speed on a safe road, and a safe vehicle is going to build incrementally on itself in order to make a safer road system. And I think there are all kinds of different ways of diagramming this out and looking at the contributions of all of the traditional stuff of education, of enforcement, and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through two sets of examples, and this is like one urban and one rural, where we've actually done some stuff in Canada. And these have happened in a bunch of different cities in Canada. And some of the people who are from cities here are running their own programs that are way more all singing, all dancing than what I'm showing you. So these are just by way of example. And as I say, I can explain the Toronto example as well because I participated in the research. So ask me all the questions about the Quebec examples because those are Marie-Soleil's. So this is the first little thing that we looked at in Toronto. And this was looking at what happens when you put up a speed hump? And do you actually reduce collisions by putting up speed humps on urban roads in a city like Toronto? We looked at the little blue roads there, which are roads that receive new treatments with speed humps. And we used a pre-period and a post-period of collisions and counted all of the pedestrian collisions at all ages. And so that was a data set of 1,350 collisions along roadways that didn't have a speed hump and then at some point did. And we looked at what happened between the pre-period and the post-period with the roads kind of working as their own controls. We saw a 22% overall decrease in vehicle pedestrian collisions on roads with a new speed hump treatment, but the decrease was much bigger for children. The decrease was about 45% of collisions for children. And just on that chunk of roads in Toronto with speed humps, which wasn't all of the neighborhood roads by any means, we probably we're measuring a prevention of some 300 pedestrian motor vehicle collisions. This is not a big enough data set to look at killed and severe injured because those are rare events, but these are looking at collisions with a car and a pedestrian as a surrogate, and I think it's a reasonable enough surrogate. So there's a mechanical thing that worked in our town. Then we looked at where are the speed humps. And we did some spatial analysis that shows us where high incomes cluster in Toronto, although you can walk around and figure that out on your own. And we did some spatial analysis that figures out where low incomes cluster in Toronto. What you can see here is that our low income census tract, our low income clusters in red there, did not receive very much speed hump treatment. Why? Because it's neighborhood request that drives this process in its traditional form. Our high income areas received some of the speed hump treatment, and some of the speed hump treatment is where income didn't cluster as well. So this is being done according to perceived need, according to volume, according to request, but it's not being done according to where the pedestrians are actually getting injured. So again, we've got our low income clusters here in the red, and those capture a lot of the dark gray and a lot of the black that are the high pedestrian collision areas. We've got our high income clusters again in the blue, and the high income clusters did not contain the pedestrian problem in the first place. So we managed to measure the effect of speed bumps at reducing collisions, even though we put them where the people at risk weren't and where the bulk of the crashes weren't. And with Alison and Ian, this is an across Ontario look at what that kind of road safety planning that's a little blind to equity considerations actually does. And what that kind of road safety planning actually does is it creates these white bars of us seeing an improving pedestrian situation in the high income quintiles or the high income census tracts in Ontario. But we actually see the opposite. We actually see a worsening pedestrian problem in the low-income census tracts in Ontario. So we've got this really nice mechanical thing called a speed bump. Like that's sort of like a silver bullet for kinetic energy, right? The speed bumps in rural Mexico will actually take the front suspension out of a Jeep. And that's the local big man protecting the local people from idiot tourists like me who don't understand what TOPES means on a sign, right? So here we've got a kinetic energy thing that actually works, and we just need to put it where the problem lies. There are other things that we can do to reduce speed beyond the mechanical. Like we've got a sign saying drive down this road at 40 or drive down this road at 50. And as most of you know, we're changing a lot of those signs to say, hey, drive down this road at 30 instead. Well, what does just changing that sign do? Just that. Just changing the speed limit in a chunk of roads. And this is where we had the opportunity to do a comparative study in Toronto, and all of those blue roads that were treated in Toronto and East York, this was just an act of the city council. Okay, we're going to take all of our 40 kilometer an hour and some of our 50 kilometer an hour neighborhood roads, and they're going to become 30 zones. And in Scarborough, which agreed to work as a control group for our study or didn't pass the same legislation at the same time, they didn't. And the table is too small even for me to read. But what happened here is we saw, again, a 28% reduction in pedestrian motor vehicle crashes where we had just reduced the speed limit. That's all we did, and less people got hit. And in Scarborough, where they didn't do the same thing, it's kind of the same drivers most of the time doing the same thing in the same weather, and nothing happened. So now we've got two tools in the bag. We can make a rule or we can enforce it with one of those. And then here's another means of enforcement. And I really don't want to give Soror's talk from this afternoon. I want to watch Soror's talk from this afternoon. I think automated speed enforcement requires a lot of discussion because it's a political hot button issue. You heard our deputy minister talking this morning about increasing the administrative penalty capacity for automated speed enforcement in Ontario. They're bought in. In other places, automated speed enforcement is seen as political suicide. Why is it politicized? And why do we need to potentially hurt children because a politician wants to get reelected? This is a really interesting topic, and we need to understand kind of the facts about automated speed enforcement. We're in the middle of evaluating Toronto's pilot program, which is only going on in community safety zones at school zones. We're doing 300 schools. We've done a step wedge randomized design. We've got 50 units that move around. This was where they were in the first phase. So you can see they're well distributed across Toronto because of our 25 districts. Each has 2 cameras, and that gives us a fairly representative sample if we randomize them. And then I'm going to barely interpret this slide, but these are the speeds of all of the cars going past the speed camera. And the speed camera was measuring. In their first phase, the speed camera was measuring just sitting there passively, not writing tickets, but just sitting there passively by the roadside, establishing the data stream, actually for many, many weeks. And we have a lot of people going over the speed limit by the green areas of 1 to 5 or 6 to 10 kilometers per hour. And then we've got a fairly substantial number of people who go through Toronto. I mean, our record was in the hundreds of kilometers an hour in a school zone. And these aren't outliers. It's just people doing weird stuff. But suffice to say, as soon as we started ticketing with this camera, we saw this data stream that said that the large number of people who are a little bit over and the smaller number of people who are a lot over all got kind of squished. There's downward pressure on speeds, and the downward pressure is bigger for the red bands. So please listen to Soror this afternoon because he'll explain that concept properly with all its to's and fro's. So now we're going to move into a rural setting where we actually have more like highway speeds in Quebec. And these are roads under the Quebec ministry jurisdiction that had a change in the speed limit between 2006 and 2013. So this is 8,340 road segments that Marie-Soleil and her team was looking at, with initial speeds in that 70, 80, or 90 kilometer an hour zone, and some of which came all the way down into our more urban, more friendly speeds, but others of which came down by a little bit. All kinds of databases used to look at a complex road situation. If we look at what happened to speed, there are various different categories of reduction, but the bottom line here is that both the mean speeds and the 85th percentile speeds all responded to a speed limit change. So you change the speed limit and the actual travel speed changes, not as much. There's a little bit of squishiness in the area. You look at citations and administrative penalties, and if you change the speed to be down, then the number of citations goes up and in proportion to the size of the change. And if you change the speed to be increased, then the numbers of citations for speeding goes down. And this is all part of that non-linear relationship between what the speed limit is and what speed people actually travel. So you change the speed limit and you don't get as much change in the effective speeds, but you do get slower speeds if you lower it and more people find, and you do get faster speeds if you raise it and fewer people find. And a little bit more detail on the differential speeds. So what you can see here is that lowering speed limits by 10 kilometers an hour seems to change the speed of travel a little bit more than raising them. That raising the speed limit by 30 kilometers an hour didn't make much difference to travel speeds on those roads, but that's probably because those roads were designed for and being used at higher speeds to begin with, and that may have been an acknowledgement. And these roads aren't randomly selected. These roads are selected for a whole bunch of reasons. But dropping the speed fairly substantially can actually drop the travel speeds fairly substantially, and it does create some infractions. So yes, you can control speeds by changing the speed limit in rural settings. And then these little graphs try and show what that meant to road users and what that meant to killed and severe injury collisions. And there's a control group in this data set, but the control group includes some roads that weren't perceived to need a speed change. And the experimental group includes roads that were perceived to need a speed change. So the control group probably contains our safest roads with less pedestrian exposure or with more appropriate vehicle speeds to begin with. And the case ones included the ones that needed to be changed. And I think that there are some trends here that show that bigger speed limit reductions actually reduce the KSIs. If you look at the graph on the right, where we brought everything to how many years before the speed limit change, how many years after the speed limit change, the most favorable situation is that gray line, where we did a 20 to 40 kilometer per hour speed limit reduction, and we saw a substantial drop in killed and severe injury, but even compared with a control group. But there's a lot more noise in these smaller speed limit reductions and nothing that allows you to be particularly conclusive. In the multivariable modeling, what made a difference to killed and severe injuries per road segment? Well, volume things like how much road was there and what was the daily travel were all positively associated. Having a sharp turn in a road was positively associated with KSI collisions. Intersections had more KSI only in the multivariable model. And divided road segments had less KSI. Remembering these are killed and severe injuries of all road users put together. So safer roads are slower roads, but safer roads are also roads that have certain types of characteristics. And then I think what we're doing here is we're drawing some comparisons between the different road classes that had speed reductions and looking, for example, at our 90 kilometer an hour roads, where 4% of the road segments would have had a killed or severe injury event before the speed reduction. And in those 90 kilometer an hour roads with a fairly substantial reduction, that 4% of segments went down to about 1% of segments. So we saw a big magnified effect on KSIs in certain circumstances. But we also see some things here like the blue and the green rectangle, where the 80-kilometer-an-hour roads that were selected to have a speed reduction looked like they were more dangerous to begin with, probably, than the roads that were unchanged. And so there is likely a kind of a selection in this set. If you select your worst roads, they're worse for either structural or random reasons, because you get small number variability. If you're selecting roads that are worse for structural reasons and you do something about it, you measure a real effect. If you select roads that are worse for random reasons, you may measure a regression to mean effect. And if you select roads that are worse in the first place and then look at the control group and say, well, what was left? The control group actually looks pretty good if you had a set of safe roads that didn't really need a speed reduction. So there's all kinds of complexity in this data that makes it difficult to do as an experiment, and that makes it difficult to get back to that really pure science where you just nail k equals a half mv squared on your wall above your computer in case you have a power failure and still need to do road safety, right? So higher initial speeds, higher speed limit reduction gives the best set of speeds. It was hard to prove on the rural roads in Quebec that collision reductions were caused by speed limit changes alone, but it's difficult to imagine the counterfactual that's not true. And there's a lot of challenges in working with multiple data sets. Fortunately, we're not alone in Canada. And this stuff has been done, and it's been done. And it's been done again. Empirically, in every country, we've done speed limits down, we've done speed limits up. And some very smart people have summarized it for us and have given us little heuristics that we can hang our hat on and that are consistent with all of the results that I've just shown you. And so Nielsen put this together in the late 90s, early 2000s, and explained it as a power law. And what he said is, no matter what jurisdiction we look in, no matter what sort of set of speeds we're looking at, if you increase the vehicle speed by 1%, expect to see 2% more crashes. Expect to see 3% more crashes with injuries. Expect to see 4% more fatal crashes. Okay? I can't see 4% more fatal crashes in Toronto. I've only got 36 of them every year. So I have a measurement problem, and Marie-Soleil has a measurement problem, but we don't have a problem understanding what's driving the system and why it's driving the system. And we don't have a problem if we zoom out to the international level and say, what do we collectively know empirically? We know that speed reduction works as a power law to squish our collisions, our injuries, and our fatalities in an increasing way. We know the converse. We know that speed increase programs actually do the opposite and to the same power. And that's all very well documented. So I hope I've motivated you by talking about vulnerable road user deaths. I think we all care about that. I hope I've convinced you that speed is, if not the key variable, at least a key variable that we need to keep in mind when we're thinking about all of our programs, whether we're people who evaluate or people who do. And I hope I've inspired you that even in the Canadian setting, if you take some city and if you take some rural area, hey, speed control works. It actually does what it says it should, and it saves lives. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm sorry you had to listen to me instead of Marie-Soleil. I would much rather have listened to her than listen to myself, but you know. Thank you, Brenda.
Oh, that is, sorry, quite a presentation. And it's hard to believe that he just confirmed being our keynote today at like 7 o'clock last night. So that's amazing, isn't it? Like just, wow. Yeah, no, I mean, it seems so simple, you know, the mechanics, as you say, and the stats, and as you said, all the empirical evidence out there, and yet it's still hard to convince people sometimes to dedicate the money towards it. I mean, yeah. So you just really drove that message home, and that both in a urban and rural settings, you know, you can have such an impact, even if you can just reduce it. Obviously, it's best if you can go to 30, but even just smaller reductions, you still see that decline in terms of serious injuries and fatalities. And we actually have a few minutes for questions because originally Marie-Soleil was going to be part of a panel. So we have like 5 minutes for questions, and then we're going to take a 5-minute break while we set up for the panel. So I'd like to open the floor. And if you could bring your questions to the floor mic, that would be great. Oh, got to take care.
Alan German. Andrew, I congratulate you on your presentation. That really was an excellent presentation. I guess I'm thinking that we have a communication problem. We know that speed controls work, but the great Canadian public hates them. And I know how to get incredible media attention if I want to kill 25 children. How do I get the same level or something like that level of attention if I save the lives of 25 or 250 children but by using speed controls?
Really good point.
Alan, it is wonderful to see you again. Thank you so much. You know, my older daughter was at the Montreal Grand Prix yesterday. And so when you talk about speed as being something that is a little bit into the DNA of the motorized vehicle crowd, especially the males, but this is my daughter. You know, rapid movement through space elates one, right? I mean, I can't remember who said that, but people like to go fast. Mm-hmm. And they also like to feel in control, and they often kind of are in control, or at least most of the people most of the time. There's an efficiency argument for going faster that's kind of been lost in some of our urban areas because some of our traffic has congealed to an inefficient point. There are better cars, there are better roads, there is the ability to travel faster, more safely in Canada compared with how we traveled in the 1970s. And then there are politicians who see the world in a variety of different ways. And I think one of the things that has taken down governments in Ontario in the past is photo radar on highways, not exclusively and only, but this interaction of freedom and power and control and individuality and where we sit with the collective is a political discussion. And it is impossible to name the 25 children, I don't know, 250 children, 2,500 children. I mean, you've been sitting at motor vehicle regulation for child occupants. You are probably into the thousands, Alan. I haven't done the math. They're out there, and even they don't know who they are, right? Whereas if you actually count victims, everybody knows who they are. You count your saves in a road system, and we can't bring them out for a parade, but they are there, and we know it. And all we need is a little bit of math that holds up an accurate mirror to society and shows us what's going on. And a little bit of an acknowledgement that, yeah, sure, there is a place for speed and efficiency. And if I want to move around faster, maybe I'm on a higher speed roadway that pedestrians are completely separated from, and that we're okay with vehicle travel at that speed. Maybe I've gone one further and done that on rails. Maybe if it's a sport, I'm on a motorsport track, but not, as the deputy minister said, you know, in the wilds of Scarborough drifting. So yes, there's a lot about speed that is so intrinsic to what human beings want to do and can do, and often can do relatively safely, that we have to recognize and kind of pick apart. And we have to recognize that our prevented injuries will never be counted, but they are out there. And they're out there in legions, school buses and classrooms full of them. So thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for teaching me a bunch of stuff about kinetic energy a little while ago. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I think we have a chance for one more question if we have one. Oh.
Thank you. I'm one of those politicians, so
excellent.
So I get all the complaints. So one of the biggest complaints I get, because we have the ASC cameras in our school zones, and I actually moved that we increase the number of cameras. So my residents now, once they go into their neighborhood, they send me that little clip from the media saying, why on earth did you do that? But one of the complaints I get the most is, why are the cameras there 24/7? And of course, we don't tell anyone when they're turned on. We don't even know, because that's part of the program. But my answer is usually, well, you know, it's 30 24/7. So, you know, you don't change the speed limit at 1 a.m. But what would your advice be to the operation of the speed cameras in the school zones? Because it's really hard to refute the argument that if you're trying to reduce fatalities and injuries with children, because that's the argument that we've all been using, then why are they operating when there are no children in those areas? So if you have a magic answer, I would love to hear it, and so would every other counselor around Ontario.
Yeah. I mean, schools are a bit of a marker for communities, and the name that these school zones are given, when you can legitimize the presence of a speed camera, is a community safety zone. If you're looking at a properly built community in Toronto, then as well as children living in that neighborhood, you have all ages of people. If you're putting an elementary school somewhere, and that's the area of these focus, then that should ideally be an area where the streets are safe for pedestrians between 8 and 80 years, so that we've got an all ages, intrinsically safe and passively safe design that allows for lapses in human behavior and all of these other things. As far as the children themselves are concerned, you know, the park is usually right next door to the school, and so the activity after hours and in the evening hours and when the sun's going down, which it usually is in Canada, the activities are child focused for much more time of the day than just I went to school and I came back. If you have teenagers, especially with this hybrid learning and online model in that same neighborhood, they're all over the place all the time, much earlier and much later. And if you've got elderly people in that community, you know what? They might be riding for free for the time being on what the school community safety zone has said, but they're riding along as well, and they're a much bigger concern. So by the time you put in all of the hours of the day where all of these activities are anticipated, by the time you look at the age groups that are affected, by the time you look at the data saying when do children actually get hit, because it's not just at those two little peaks, like actually when children are killed on roads in Toronto is not those 2 hours only. At least half of them are kind of outside those school activity hours. We come down to very, very little time. It's only about kind of 1 a.m. until 3 a.m. that I would think is our negotiable area. I would rather have the street sweeper then than the motorcycle racers. And the street sweeper does not need to go very fast. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And as a small token of our appreciation, I have a little gift for you, and thank you again. Great presentation. So, and I guess I should have done that earlier. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so it's 9:33 right now. So we're going to take a 5-minute break to get things ready for our panel. So if you could come back no later than 20 to 10, that would be great. Thank you very much.